The last thing I wanted to get to, Justin, was the other two programs that I'll put in the same position entering this season would be Florida State and Nebraska, where they have these enormous fan bases, tradition, history, and they're just can't wait to get back at it.
Yep.
Michigan shouldn't, from a record standpoint, be put in the category of those two. Again, I reminded people this 800 times this past offseason. 6 games. They were lousy for 6 games.
Yep.
Before that, 9-3, 10-2. But anyway, everybody still put them in that classification as, is Michigan back? What's wrong with them? They're falling off the rails. And I get it from a perception standpoint. And Harbaugh almost left. People thought all that. I get it. Florida State falls to Jacksonville State following a hopeful, optimistic effort against the Notre Dame team.
Right.
It may not be as good as we thought, but I think they are. I think they're pretty good. So that was an optimistic effort in week 1. Then they fall off the rails, lose to Jacksonville State. Nebraska, of course, they got a couple smoke and mirror type wins against very inferior opponents. So they're back at it against Oklahoma. Well, a wake-up call again after losing to Illinois. So my point being, these fan bases that are just starved to be at the top of college football and contend again. And I just see it based on the feedback that we get here on Florida State, Nebraska. I see it just based on the response that you had these fan bases and then they got let down again.
Yeah.
And that's another portion of this scene on Saturday night. Regardless of what happens with Washington, whether they turn it around, become a decent team, or this is really like a bad Washington team, regardless, they came in with talent and a name, and it was a primetime game, and the Mays out was amazing. If Michigan loses that game, then it goes the Florida State, Nebraska route.
100%. Yeah, I think that I was actually talking with a few people that people didn't realize the importance of that game, especially because of the loss to Montana. People wrote it off as a normal, like, MAC opponent almost, right? But I think that because you have so many people watching, you made it into a big game. It is, whether they're good this season or not, they're a Power 5 program. They've been at the top of the Pac-12, year in, year out, kind of for the past however many years. Obviously, Chris Lake needs to figure some things out, but I think that people didn't understand, if you stumble there, honestly, even if you don't dominate that game, if you win by a field goal or you don't look good in the first half, you're down 14 at any point before you make a comeback, people start talking and start saying, wow, this Michigan team is not good. This program's going in the wrong direction, all that stuff. So I thought that game was really important in terms of perception of which direction this Michigan program is going. I also think internally for these guys, these players, to have confidence, this new coaching staff to have confidence, they needed that stadium to be loud and for them to show out for those fans and say, all right, these people appreciate us. We think we're solid. We're preparing like we do for Ohio State every week, that we keep hearing that. And now the perception is now, whether you want to buy into it, whether how many times you've heard it, it's changing. It's a different team. They're feeling different. For right now, that's what the vibe is. Let's get to the Wisconsin game and see what happens there first before I say, oh, this is a different program. They're a different team. If Michigan goes into Wisconsin, lays an egg, then it's going to be like, we've seen this before, but I think for right now, this game was really important to keep this program going in the right direction. And like you said, keep this fan base that's so hungry for something, keep them bought in for a little bit to Jim Harbaugh and this team.
Jim, if you're listening out there, I know Wisconsin lost a game, but they basically gave up no yards to Penn State in losing that game. And then I heard that they only gave up 1 first down until the final drive of the game against Eastern Michigan on Saturday.
Oh my gosh,
this is a typical Wisconsin defense. So get the 24-3 lead at halftime and then open it up and work on some things.
Yeah, And guess what? I'm sorry, but this offensive line is not going to be able to run for 300 yards. You know, they're not going to push around a Wisconsin defensive line like they could Washington. So you're going to have to use your speed that you have on the outside and try and burn them for a couple long plays if you want to win that game. So I couldn't agree more. I'm going to be really concerned if we don't see over the next 2 weeks them open it up a little bit and pass the ball and have Cade McNamara back on that rhythm that he was in week 1. Because that's what my concern is. We've seen this before from Michigan. They dominate the teams that they're supposed to dominate. They do it in a fashion where it's really one-sided. It's a one-way type of thing. And then they run into something where all of a sudden that doesn't work anymore and they have no plan B. There's nothing else they can go to. And so I want to see for the next, 2 weeks for them to throw the whole playbook out there, see what happens, get creative. And then, hopefully when you get into Madison and when those linebackers in that D line starts shoving you around and you can't run the ball, you have another option to go to.
Justin Rowe, Blue by 90 podcast. I encourage you to head on over there. Follow Justin on Twitter at JustinRowe92. Lock it on in here. Of course, Michigan postgame in particular, following every Michigan game. Justin, we always appreciate you stopping by, laying down the knowledge for us.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks, Mark.